To be the last speaker of the conference. I feel so very privileged. Thank you very much for sticking it out and being here. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to be giving you a bit of an overview of what happened with resettlement in Victoria. So the other side of what Jerry was talking about on the West Coast. So just to give you a bit of overview of the region, a snapshot of what happened with us, challenges, successes, and as we move forward. So for those that have not visited Victoria before, we're the capital city of BC, and we've been providing services since 1971. Interestingly enough, in that small area, we have 13 different municipalities, so we deal with 13 different mayors with 3 electoral districts, and there's an urban core and a rural spread, and lots of islands only accessible by ferries. Our population is 383,000, so not a lot of people considering the amount of mayors we have to deal with. Who's been coming to the CRD in the last year? We get about 2,000 to 2,500 new immigrants, 2,500 international students in the capital region. About 1,000 temporary foreign workers, lots of seasonal workers, and in the last year, about 550 refugees. Obviously, people are always attracted to our climate, so we do get quite an influx of people. The ethnic makeup, about 50% are Chinese, and then it diversifies from there, Philippines, India, Korea. Just a note that prior to 2015, our privately sponsored refugee numbers were quite low, about 20 or so, and we had not seen any GARs, except this dates back my work in the sector, except for our Operation Parasol, which was the Kosovo refugees, but we hadn't seen GARs for about 20, 25 years previous to the influx. And also I should note, interestingly enough, Victoria is the only capital city that was not a RAP provider until 2016. So we're a settlement serving agency. As I mentioned, we serve about 2,500 newcomers annually. We have a full suite of IRCC-funded services, as you can see there, and we're also a sponsorship agreement holder. So we deal with constituent group members and deal directly with privately sponsored refugees. We have an arts arm, which I'll talk a bit about as well, and we have a community partnership network, which is a group of over 200 local agencies, businesses, institutions, to build diversity and welcoming and inclusivity within the Greater Victoria area. 2 offices, we have a staff of 95, I think it's reaching 100 now or so, and with the 13 municipalities, we provide itinerant services. I should also mention we are a LIPS provider as well. So just taking a quick look at bringing you back to resettlement, and when the afternoon panel, Stephanie was talking about what was happening on Parliament Hill, we were anxiously waiting for that Liberal decision to see if Victoria was going to be a new RAP centre. And so in anticipation of that, we brought together a number of key partners, our Island Health Authority, the different core municipalities, also the school districts. There's 3 different school districts. We also provide settlement workers in schools programs, so we have 3 different school districts we deal with. So municipal mayors, financial institutions, and a huge number of our community partnership network members and LIPS members were really had a huge appetite for wanting to partner, collaborate, get ready for this huge influx of refugees that were coming in. And so we tried to corral that enthusiasm by starting up these meetings before the arrival, giving people a quick history lesson on what was happening with Syria and the types of refugees we may be receiving. Partners were fantastic. I think Jerry's mentioned this as well over in the Atlantic. People wanted to offer space for temporary housing. Health professionals were signing up for IFH. Clinical counselors were stepping up. Lots of sponsors were stepping up as well. And then came mid-February, we were informed formally that we would be a new RAP center. And I think this slide, I think we signed it right at the end of February, RCA, and IRCC contracted directly with the hotel and the Canadian Red Cross. We were fortunate that we had a good relationship with our local chapter, and we hired all our RAP staff. And I want to give a shout out to our ISS of BC colleagues who provided training for our RAP and settlement workers, because this was all new for us. So, as I mentioned, the ink was hardly dry on the contract on that CA when we received our first family in February, and by March 6th, 154 Syrians had arrived. We were anticipating 290, but fortunately we were capped off at 154, which was about 40 families. So some of the challenges, I echo the challenges that my colleagues across country face. The short timeline, especially with, for us, which when we hadn't provided RAP before. So we had, fortunately for us, we had existing staff members that had experience with refugees and key staff through succession planning that were ready to take on some management roles. And so that helped tremendously. The partnerships were challenging, and also you'll see in my next slide around successes, but with the surge, the hotel that the IRCC contracted directly would not have been our first choice because of vicinity or the lack thereof to the downtown core. However, we worked with what we had, and of course the Canadian Red Cross, very different in their approach in terms of refugee resettlement, not as much experience. So it was definitely interesting in the beginnings of roles and responsibilities, and for those that worked with Red Cross, I'm sure it was the same. It was trying to find that right balance while dealing with a large group and group mentality in the hotel. Expectations, trying to manage expectations not only of refugees, of course, the expectations sometimes out of proportion to what the reality was, which exacerbated a lot of these challenges, particularly around housing, food, and because it was a large group that came at the same time, that was hard as well to dispel some of the myths. Expectations of community members, many people wanting to step up to donate, found out where the hotel was, dropping numerous donations, and sometimes quite overwhelming, inappropriate at times. And I think Jerry mentioned this, they're very dismissive of staff and the expertise that we had, so I see some nods of heads out there. Housing in the Lower Mainland as well as Victoria, our rental vacancy rate is the lowest. I think Canada, 0.5% in Victoria. So you can well imagine the competition and the high rents. And so we do have a Vancouver Island Alliance of Immigrant Welcome Centers, so our partners in Nanaimo, Duncan, up in Courtenay Campbell River. And so we were able to work with some of the families to move them up into more affordable housing. So we talk about the successes in terms of, we had a fantastic partnership. I'm just going to highlight some of the partnerships with Island Health Authority, with the initiative and the key meetings we had prior to the surge. We're fortunate that we had a champion in Island Health, and she brought in a group of nurses and did all of the medical screening in the hotel for the 154 refugees. And the school districts worked jointly together, put together a presentation. A lot of the questions came up from the parents of what were going to happen to their children. They wanted to get their children into education since they had not seen it in the refugee camps. And so the school districts got together, did a presentation and tour of schools for all of the families with school-age children. Recreation centers were very helpful as well and provided free passes. BC Transit Authority in Victoria provided free monthly bus passes for all refugees that landed and stayed in the Victoria area for 1 year. And they have committed, this is their second year, and we are working on a third year. So that's been very helpful. Community volunteers, can't say enough, even though I mentioned some of the challenges around in terms of expectations, but there was key volunteers that would fill, once they found out a refugee family was moving into a house, basically had all the household goods ready, and people were ready to move in. And definitely volunteers that were connected to GARS, very committed and hardworking, and again with the donation pieces that just came in. So as we move forward, we're very happy that we are continuing to be a RAP site, RAP center, welcoming refugees, and I'll touch on these points as we move forward here. So presently we have 285 government-assisted refugees, which is about 82 families, 243 privately sponsored refugees, 14 VBOR cases. We are not the only SAW in the Greater Victoria area, the Anglican Diocese is as well. And then we, I don't know what the count is, but there are arrivals or have been arrivals from national SAWs and groups of 5. Self-transfers aren't included in this number. We do have seen a number of self-transfers that have come in. And I think one thing I just wanted to mention, while we're very proud of the work that we've done, and what we're proudest most of, especially in the present, and hoping that will continue to be funded as a RAP center, is that we've seen a remarkable change in the demographics of the Greater Victoria area. If for those that know a bit about Victoria, it's very WASPy, it's very British, and so to have people walking with hijabs, to be visibly, you can identified and not glanced at, and not saying that there's not racism, definitely, but still, I think it's really changed the makeup of it, and we've got a lot of faith in the youth and the children of these refugees in making, being contributors to society. So the strategies, talking about what we've learned and how we're moving on, these are not new, these are not, just I wanted to emphasize from our perspective. Building and maintaining relationships, obviously that has been a key. And I think maintenance of the relationships is really important. Having regular meetings, I think what we found is sharing vital information with partners. So if there's a struggle for housing, let people know, and you never know who will come out of the woodwork. People want to be in the know with information. They want to be, that isn't normally shared with the general public. They want to feel important and be part of the service. And I think the uniqueness of the CRD and the Victoria is the fact that we're urban, yet we're small. We always talk about 2 degrees of separation. And so I think it's really important to be able to provide that information to those that are connected. Recognizing champions, I mentioned Island Health, who brought in the role, the group of nurses. Really, the champion there has made a significant difference. And when she saw the struggles around medical care, in BC we struggle with having family practitioners that are enough for even the mainstream community. She went ahead and asked for funding from the Island Health Authority and was able to secure a nurse practitioner. And this nurse practitioner basically deals specifically with the refugee population that comes into the Greater Victoria. We have clinics at our office as well as the health unit, and that's made a huge difference in the medical piece. So any GARs that arrive, they do receive medical screening within that first week. And that is because of the champion and the partnership. I think connecting with partners is also very important. This picture that I've got is a special event that it was actually through our Community Partnership Network connection. It's connecting police with the Muslim community. Domestic violence issues obviously had come up, and as well as just the stereotype of police and if you can trust them and not. And so that has been fantastic because the residual effects of all of this stress and the large group coming in all at once still plays a part, still presents itself within our staff, and so being able to connect with partners with each other does take some of that pressure off. Another strategy is communications, establish clear communication guidelines. I mentioned that already. We have a fantastic relationship with the local mosque, and that is through LIPS as well as our Community Partnership Network. And so we have regular meetings. Our RAP team has regular meetings with the mosque. Just to clear the air, we've learned a lot around, obviously, with information that refugees share rumors, and so to sort of try to keep those at bay convey and discuss transparencies with the board leaders, and the imam has made a huge difference in making sure that the real information is getting out. Showcasing success stories, again, not new, but we have a monthly newsletter, a blog, we have social media tools, and we make sure that there's stories that are put out on a monthly basis to keep the issue in the forefront. Creating high-profile projects. At the time, we were fortunate. The picture there is, you see the man with the Rocco with the Google shirt. He is from Google, and Kate Longpre is our community integration coordinator. She came up with the idea of hey, there's this app called Google Translate. Let's use it. And so what she did was she called Google, and Google called back. And so we're fortunate. We have a program called the We Speak Translate project, and basically it's the first of its kind in collaboration between Google Translate and ICA. We've branded it. That little sticker that you see in the circle there is what people get after their training. And basically it's an app that you can translate in hundreds of different languages. You can speak into it, you can look at print on it, and we've really used that as a way to connect refugees and welcoming inclusion and for businesses to use and connect with refugees. Over 1,000 people have been trained, not just in Victoria, but across the country as well as internationally. And so that brings me also to the use of technology. I think it's really important to have Facebook, Instagram. If you've obviously worked with this client group, WhatsApp, WeChat, Twitter, I think it's really important to be able to share that information and real information instead of the fake news. And then this last strategy, I think, is creating opportunities for connection. And I think one of the Keith said this around frequent contact breaks social norms. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. We know about volunteers. Volunteers have given a lot. We have ourselves at ICA have over 250 volunteers on an annual basis that give very much. Social and networking events obviously are key as well, because you don't know what donors or what connections you can make. But the one issue I want to emphasize is around arts programming. I think it's really important, and it hasn't been talked a lot about at the conference. We have an arts arm, and I alluded to that earlier. And we have been doing arts events for a number of years. We had a huge celebration called Folk Fest and lantern festivals, and basically been local celebrations that encourage community-focused artistic innovation and collaboration among diverse cultures, and really bringing out the forefront of the arts, and as well as promoting cultural awareness. And it's, for us, what we've seen, and really with art, everybody knows it's a therapeutic tool. And what we've seen is that over time, art projects have brought people together. They've given our clients confidence to deal with challenges. It gives them a sense of empowerment. Settling into a new country, they can really use a different form to give a voice to the barriers and challenges that they've had to endure. And in that way, we've been able to partner with a lot of non-traditional organizations. We've been able to partner with museums, local artists, theaters, art societies. And so this is definitely something to think about. And not only Canadians, I mean, it's art, and I think for those that came to the play last night, can attest, there's an emotional piece to it, and usually when there's an emotional piece, it connects with people and people remember. And so I think that with the arts, it's really important to think about that from a settlement perspective of how we can use that as a tool. And the other thing I wanted to mention, for those that work on the ground, that there's a lot of refugees and immigrants that come in that are artists. They're musicians, painters, photographers, sculptors, and art is an important tool for integration that blurs linguistic, social, and economic lines. And we've seen numerous enrichment in terms of projects. And here's one for the researchers out there. Maybe it's an idea to take a look at arts participation in patterns of recent immigrants. And it may reveal pathways to broader integration around the cultural, social, economic, and civil participation in the community. So I think that's something to think about. Thank you very much. Check out our website if you're interested in some of the arts projects. We have Vimeo, we've got Facebook, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Flickr, we've got pictures up. And if you're interested in We Speak Translate, the information's there as well. Thank you.